Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Married for 3 years, he hated me to the core. When I went to ask him for money, he was attending a banquet, holding his girlfriend in his arms. Hearing that I wanted to borrow 100,000, she laughed and said, "You're not even worth that much for one night." Laughter erupted around us as if I were a joke. He lifted his eyelids gently and said to the girl, "I'm still not divorced from her yet." Though it was a warning, his tone was full of indulgence. The one who could now flaunt her power, relying on Joaquin's influence, was the woman sitting beside him. She stuck out her tongue playfully. "It's just a name, right? Are you really going to scold me for her?" Chapter 1. Did I hear that right? Not 1,000,000, not 10,000,000, but 100,000? Joaquin's girlfriend looked like she had heard a hilarious joke, her eyes widening dramatically. "I remember your family used to be rich, didn't they? How did it come to this?" Her words were like salt in my wounds. Since my parents passed away, the Han family had long since fallen into decline. Now the new giant in the business world was Joaquin. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he ruled with an iron fist. Joaquin sat in the shadows, fiddling with the beads in his hand, watching my humiliation with cold detachment. The mocking gazes that followed pierced my spine. After 3 years of marriage, our relationship had long been dead in every sense but on paper. The one who now flaunted her power thanks to Joaquin's influence was the woman beside him, Fiora. "Is 100,000 okay?" My voice trembled slightly as I tried to maintain my dignity. "I'll do whatever you want." Fiora glanced at Joaquin, and seeing that he remained silent, she boldly sneered, "No offense, but you're not even worth that much for one night." Joaquin lifted his eyelids and smiled. "Fiora, we're still married." Though it was a warning, his tone was full of indulgence. She stuck her tongue out playfully. "It's just a name, right? Are you really going to scold me for her? I'll give you the money." Amid the noise, Joaquin's business partner suddenly spoke. The room fell silent. I looked up in shock, a sliver of hope igniting in my heart. Joaquin glanced at him indifferently, not stopping him, and even lit a cigarette. The partner lazily leaned back on the sofa, a playful smile curling on his lips. 10,000 per piece. Start stripping." The laughter around us nearly tore the roof off. It was obvious they were just toying with me. I felt like I had been slapped across the face, frozen in place, unable to say a word for a long time. This was a formal banquet. Everyone here was a well-known figure in the industry, not some KTV or nightclub. How ironic that my dignity could be bought for a mere 100,000. "You can strip or leave. Your choice." I glanced at Joaquin, who had remained distant and indifferent throughout. "Fine, I'll strip." I lowered my head, my fingers trembling as I unbuttoned my coat. As the straps of my dress were exposed under the lights, those who had not been aware of the situation began to turn curious eyes on me. Joaquin's gaze grew colder as he watched me from the shadows, his expression impassive. My neck and collarbone still bore faint traces of his kisses. "All is doing. Take off the dress." The partner licked his lips. Fiora laughed so hard she nearly fell over, even clapping her hands. I grabbed the hem of my dress, my palms sweating. Suddenly, Joaquin moved. A black card was thrown mercilessly at my chest. Joaquin leaned back, extinguishing his cigarette, his tone indifferent. "That's enough? Don't embarrass yourself." Chapter 2 outside, rain poured down. I wrapped myself in a waiter's coat, standing under the eaves. I clutched the black card tightly in my hand, as if holding onto a lifeline. It was cold, and I had to press the button several times before the phone connected. Aunt's voice came through the receiver. "Where's the money?" "I got it." My voice was thick with congestion from a lingering cold. I rubbed my nose and cautiously asked, "Has Alice's condition improved?" "Don't ask questions you shouldn't." Aunt's voice was icy. "Juliet, this is your responsibility, understand? The sins your father committed, you have to repay. Whether you steal, beg, or sell yourself, Alice can't die. In the car accident caused by my father, Alice had become a vegetable. Now that my parents were gone, it was up to me to atone." "All right, I understand." After hanging up, I looked up at the dark sky, lost in thought. The rain fell on my forehead, numb to the cold. I didn't even notice Joaquin and Fiora approaching until they were close. "Joaquin, are you coming to my place tonight?" Fiora's tone was light and playful. "No, Next time. Joaquin's response was brief. She didn't dare to argue, getting into Joaquin's car. The black car smoothly disappeared into the night, and silence returned. Suddenly, Joaquin grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. "Come home with me." The light in my eyes dimmed as I quietly accepted what was about to happen. The car door closed, cutting off the noise outside. His long legs caged me in the corner. Joaquin leisurely loosened his tie, his voice commanding, "Strip." The driver, well accustomed to such scenes, raised the partition without a word. "Tomorrow. Can we do it tomorrow?" I had been out in the rain, my body alternating between hot and cold, the dizziness growing stronger. "Didn't they say 1,000 per piece?" His mocking laughter echoed in my ear. "If they can, why can't I?" He removed his watch. The wedding ring on his finger gleamed with cold light. I had picked it out myself. He still wore it not out of love, but as a reminder that loving him was an unforgivable sin. I, Juliet, was meant to stay in hell for the rest of my life. Chapter 3. The bustling streets reflected in my pupils. The stars above seemed to sway. Soon tears blurred the lights. The heavy scent of cigars filled the car. Joaquin was behind me, his hand resting on my waist, sparing no effort to mock me. "So thin? How desperate are you for money? Haven't I fed you enough?" Ash from his cigarette fell on my back, and the burn made me shudder. He knew all too well how to break me down. "Please, don't do this." Joaquin ignored my pleas, his eyes cold yet wrapped in a fiery rage. Even his words were laced with hostility. My scalp tightened as he grabbed my hair, forcing me to lift my face, staring at my own reflection in the car window. "Julie, do you still dare to love me? Haven't you suffered enough?" My mind was in chaos, my body curling into a ball as I repeatedly apologized. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." My hands clawed helplessly at the leather seat, breaking my nails. Moisture seeped in through the crack in the window, drifting into the car. In the haze, I remembered the time when Joaquin said to me, "Julie, I will marry you for sure." But some things could never go back to how they were. Behind me, his voice grew tired. "Shut up. You're not worthy of apologizing to me." Chapter 4. I woke up at dusk, disoriented for a moment before remembering that today was the anniversary of my parents' death. Dragging my exhausted body out of bed, I opened the door. The twilight light split the house in half, one side bathed in warm sunlight, the other in shadow. Joaquin, dressed in loungewear, sat on the sofa, flipping through our old photos. In the pictures, I was tightly clinging to his arm, smiling brightly. Joaquin was looking down, his eyes soft. It must have been taken 5 or 6 years ago. When he heard me stir, he turned to look at me, but those once tender eyes were now filled with cold indifference. "You know what day it is today, right?" he asked. My voice was hoarse. "I know," Joaquin stood up. "Get dressed. I'll take you there." This cemetery was the resting place for many people, including my parents, and Joaquin's father. When Joaquin had the gravestones arranged, he deliberately placed them together. So every time I visited my parents, I would be reminded of who was responsible for his father's death. I squatted in front of Uncle Shen's gravestone, placing a small bouquet of daisies in front of his photo, whispering, "Uncle, I'm sorry." Uncle Shen's gaze was still kind. He had once gently said to me, "Julie, I entrust Joaquin to you." I had believed we would be happy forever. But 3 years ago, after Joaquin and I had just gotten married, my parents and Uncle Shen died in a car accident. My cousin Alice suffered a head injury and has been in a coma ever since. The driver of the car was my father. From that moment on, my peaceful and happy life was completely destroyed. I glanced at my parents' gravestone, hesitating. "What? Want to pay respects to the culprit, too?" Joaquin's voice was colder than usual. He had once clearly told me, "If you have no conscience, you can sweep your parents' graves right in front of my father." "I just want to pull some weeds." Joaquin was silent for a moment before saying, "Go ahead." My heart trembled, and I gratefully whispered, "Thank you." The early spring wind was chilly, and I hadn't fully recovered from my cold, making it hard to catch my breath. I practically jogged back to my parents' grave. Just as I was about to speak, Joaquin suddenly embraced me from behind in an excessively intimate gesture. Smiling faintly, he addressed my parents' gravestone, "Uncle, Aunt, I brought Julie to see you." I froze in place. He hadn't spoken to me like that in a long time. The next second, Joaquin whispered in my ear, "How about letting them see how much we're still in love?" A buzzing sound echoed in my head, and my face turned pale. Was he crazy? Joaquin began unbuttoning the top of my coat, his eyes filled with hatred. "Be good. Place your hands on their gravestone." I struggled, overwhelmed by shame and humiliation that washed over me. "Please, don't do this." Joaquin didn't seem to hear me, cold kisses landing on my ear one after another. Pressing against the gravestone, I finally broke down, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I won't pay my respects anymore. Just please don't do this to me." Joaquin finally stopped his actions. "Who are you talking to?" "Uncle Shen." "I'm sorry." Using the last bit of strength I had, I forced out the words before everything went black and I collapsed to the ground. Chapter 5, Patella Fracture. "She'll need long-term rehabilitation, or it could affect her ability to walk," the doctor said, standing by the bed and explaining the precautions to Joaquin. "Money isn't an issue. Use the best treatment available. Rest assured, Mr. Shen." The pain in my knee constantly gnawed at my sanity. What rotten luck collapsing and landing right on the sharp edge of a stone. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts muddled. Honestly, at this point, I wasn't sure if dying would be better than continuing to endure this torment. A cold hand rested on my forehead. I slowly turned my gaze and saw Joaquin's face instinctively flinching away. But I couldn't avoid him. For once, he was uncharacteristically gentle. "Julie, you're still running a fever. Take the medicine later." I hid under the blanket for a long time before I spoke. "Can we get a divorce?" Joaquin's expression froze. He smoothed my messy hair and softly said, "No, Julie, don't even think about it. For the rest of my life, I'll never let you go." Perhaps because my body was injured, even my dreams were unpleasant. When everything first happened, Uncle was the only one who could take charge. He had said, "Your father." He was the one responsible. That car accident killed Joaquin's father and Alice. "She's in critical condition. Julie, you need to think about what you're going to do." That day, Joaquin walked out of the morgue, his face blank. "Joaquin," I reached out to him. But the moment I touched him, he snapped coldly. "Don't touch me." That tone of disgust, I'll never forget it. The complications from surgery caused me endless suffering. Joaquin often stood by the window, a cigar in his hand, though never lit. He watched calmly as I grew thinner and thinner. The doctor said I was anemic. Joaquin never spared any expense on food or medicine, but I just couldn't eat. During meals, Fiora would call. It had become a routine. Whether out of insecurity or deliberate provocation, she would call 3 times a day without fail. Joaquin answered her calls while sitting beside me, calmly serving me food as he promised Fiora that he'd take her horseback riding next week. In 2 months, I became a walking skeleton. I didn't understand what he was thinking. Why not just end it quickly? Perhaps he needed someone to bear the pain of losing his loved ones for the rest of his life. And that person was me. 2 months later, I was discharged from the hospital. After being cooped up in the hospital for so long, my skin had taken on an unhealthy pale tone. My legs still needed time to heal. I now had an electric wheelchair. Joaquin returned to his busy life, and as if to humiliate me, today's news was full of rumors about him and Fiora. I stared blankly at the news on the hospital hallway screen until a nurse brought me back to reality. "Miss Han, visiting hours are now open." "Okay, thank you." I turned the wheelchair and entered the intensive care unit. The blackout curtains were drawn, keeping the room dim. My aunt glanced at me and then continued sitting by the window, knitting a sweater for Alice. I approached Alice, holding her hand gently. "Cousin, I'm here to see you." She used to dote on me the most. Whenever there was something delicious or fun, she'd always share it with me first. She was the one person I would give my life to protect. That's why, over the years, I never refused any of my aunt's requests. The machines beeped softly beside the bed, and I felt the warmth of Alice's fingers as I blinked back the sting of tears. I wanted to say something, but there wasn't really anything new to share. "Time's up." "Let's go," my aunt said, setting down her knitting and urging me impatiently. Just as I was about to withdraw my hand, I froze. "Half an hour, don't push it." I looked up at her, stunned. I think my cousin just moved. Moved? I swallowed hard, staring in disbelief at her fingers held tight between mine. I held my breath. My aunt's face changed, a flicker of joy crossing her features before she rushed out the door. "Doctor! My daughter's awake!" The room emptied, leaving only Alice and me. A single ray of light fell on her eyelashes, and they fluttered slightly as Alice opened her eyes. I was so overwhelmed I couldn't form coherent words. "Alice, Her gaze slowly settled on my face, and a tear rolled down from the corner of her eye. She moved her parched lips as if trying to speak. I leaned in closer. "Take your time." "I'm listening." Her lips moved slowly and she said, "Julie, I'm sorry." After that, the doctors and nurses rushed in, pushing me aside. I sat in my wheelchair, staring blankly at the empty wall. Alice's last words echoed in my mind. She had said, "It was my father driving the car." Chapter 6. It's been 3 years, and I've wished countless times that I had been the one to die that day instead of everyone else. But in the end, I realized I was also a victim. When I left the hospital, a light drizzle was falling from the sky. I bowed my head, fumbling with my phone, dialing Joaquin's number several times before I finally called. After a few rings, someone picked up. It was Fiora. "He's in the shower." "You can tell me what you need," she said, her voice haughty, making no effort to hide her smugness. To emphasize her point, I could hear the sound of running water in the background. I stayed silent for a moment, thinking this might actually be good news for her. "Fiora, I want a divorce. Could you please tell him we need to set a time to meet?" Joaquin had occupied too much of my life. Years of reckless love from adolescence, passionate devotion into adulthood, and eventually, guilty endurance of endless torment. It had been too long. It was time to leave. "You don't need to," she said brightly. "Whether you divorce him or not doesn't change my place in his heart. Fiora, we didn't sign a prenuptial agreement when we got married." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means everything Joaquin has given you, I can legally reclaim." Fiora paused, then scoffed. "And what makes you think you can? You're just a pathetic dog wagging your tail and begging." "Because I'm his wife," I said, pushing back my wet hair. "Even if he married a dog, I could still leave you with nothing. So please pass on my message to Joaquin. If we can divorce amicably, I won't pursue anything against you." Fiora hung up immediately. Alice was discharged soon after. When she heard I was moving out, she said, "That's probably for the best. My dad's gambling problem has destroyed everything we had. Joaquin's revenge should be aimed at him. I remember you wanted to study abroad before, right?" I sighed. "Forget it. I'm too tired." Over the years, all my savings had gone towards Alice's medical bills. Honestly, going somewhere new, leaving Joaquin's sphere of influence behind and finding a steady job didn't sound so bad. "All right. Let me know when you're moving. I have some friends who can help you with the luggage." I packed my scattered clothes, shoes, and small items into 2 suitcases, leaving plenty of space. I didn't plan to take much else. Earlier, Alice had recorded a message, which I sent to Joaquin. As expected, he would agree to the divorce. I had arranged to meet Alice's friends at 6 p.m. At 5:30, there was a knock at the door. My leg was still recovering, so I leaned against the wall, slowly making my way to the door. I pressed down on the handle, opening the door just a crack when a foot slipped inside. It wasn't Alice's friends, it was a familiar face. Joaquin's business partner, Leonardo, the same man who once told me to strip. "Long time no see, Mrs. Hahn," he said. Backlit by the light outside, his tall figure cast a suffocating shadow. I tried to slam the door, but he easily blocked it with his hand. "He's busy, so I'm here to talk." "But divorce requires—" Leonardo pushed the door open effortlessly, lazily loosening his tie as he walked in. I stumbled back, hitting the dining table and nearly tripping. He slapped a contract down on the table, leaning in on either side of me, the stench of tobacco overwhelming. Leonardo's gaze was lecherous. "The boss says divorce is fine, but you'll have to take on half of the $2 million in marital debt." "Is that Joaquin's idea?" Leonardo raised an eyebrow, pointing to the contract. Joaquin's signature was unmistakable. I wasn't aware of this. "Legally, the court won't." Leonardo laughed. "As long as he wants it, it doesn't matter." Yes, Joaquin could manipulate anything he wanted. He could easily twist things to saddle me with $1 million in debt. But why? It was my uncle who caused the accident, yet Joaquin still clung to punishing me. I reached for my phone to call him, but Leonardo suddenly leaned in, his lips brushing my hair. "How about you come with me?" "I can help you," he whispered, the false intimacy sending a shiver of disgust down my spine. I pushed against his chest. "Get away from me!" At the same time, I was trying to dial emergency services with my other hand, hidden behind my back. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain as my hair was yanked. Leonardo's previously playful demeanor disappeared in an instant. "Aren't you the one Joaquin's been tossing aside? You should be grateful I even want to touch you." He shoved me to the ground. My knee hit the tiles hard, going numb immediately. My phone flew out of reach. No. I struggled, the overwhelming fear crashing down on me. "Help! Mrs. Hahn, you're quite the beauty. The boss doesn't appreciate you, but I do. Didn't you strip so eagerly last time? Stop pretending." My back stung as it was scratched. Leonardo grabbed my collar, his hand sliding toward my waist. My face went pale as I fought back with everything I had, taking blows in return. From afar, my phone's screen lit up. In the chaos, I had accidentally called Joaquin. I reached out in vain, my eyes fixed on the glowing screen. This call was my last hope, but a few seconds later, the call was rejected. The screen flashed twice before going completely black. My last hope was gone. I stopped struggling. I couldn't even cry anymore. By the time the police burst in, I was lying motionless on the floor. Alice's friend had draped a jacket over me. The girl held my face gently, repeating, "It's not your fault. Don't cry. He's been arrested. He didn't succeed. We're all here for you." I had no idea why someone had recorded the whole thing. Nor did I understand how my normally quiet neighborhood had suddenly become so crowded. On the way to the hospital, I saw a video of myself circulating online. The top comment read, "Meeting her lover, but they couldn't agree on a price, right? Women who cheat deserve to die. Don't judge until you know the whole story." Are you crazy? It was attempted rape. How could you say that? Attempted rape? More like a deal gone wrong. I leaned against the car window, staring at the dark sky, thinking this might be the worst day since my parents died. I cried silently, tears streaming down my face. The police and the girls in the car didn't say a word. Everyone was trying to protect what little dignity I had left. The doctor said my knee was severely damaged again, and full recovery would be almost impossible. I accepted this reality. I called the lawyer I'd been in contact with. "Sorry, Miss Hahn, our firm is small. Are you sure you want to trust us with an attempted rape case?" "Yes, I can only afford a little, so just do your best." My mother was right. Without money, you can't take a single step. But no matter how hard it is, I have to keep trying to live, because none of this was my fault. As the nurse wheeled me toward the treatment room, Joaquin burst through the door. His usual neat and polished appearance was gone, replaced by disheveled chaos. There was rare panic on his face as his eyes quickly found me in the crowd. The lights illuminated his face, drained of all color. Julie. I sat in the wheelchair quietly, looking at him. My cheeks were still burning from the handprints, and I was covered in bruises. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I was battered all over. It had been so long since I'd seen him look worried about someone. Joaquin slowly walked toward me, kneeling down, his hand reaching out to touch my face. I raised my hand to stop him, calmly saying, "Can I see your phone?" "Okay." He handed it to me immediately, just like back when we were dating. "The password is your birthday." I unlocked the phone and skipped past the background image of me sleeping. I scrolled through his messages. Finally, I found it, the message I'd sent with the attachment. It had been buried under dozens of others. He hadn't even opened it, so that's what happened. I felt tears welling up, pulling out a smile that was more painful than crying. "You never listened to the recording I sent?" Joaquin froze, staring at the unopened file. I played it right in front of him. It was Alice's voice. "Mr. Shen, this is Alice Hahn. I need to clarify something. My father was the driver. I don't know how he managed to frame my uncle, but this has nothing to do with Julie." As the truth came out, the last trace of color drained from Joaquin's face. I looked down at him and softly said, "After all these years of torment, I finally realized that I'm a victim too. Just like you, I lost my parents in that car accident. What did I ever do wrong? If only you had listened." My voice broke, and it took all my strength to speak clearly. None of this would have happened tonight. "Why did you send Leonardo after me? Why did you hang up on me?" Why, after everything, are you kneeling here begging for forgiveness? I cried, my whole body shaking. Do you know how much pain I'm in? I'm a living, breathing person. Joaquin knelt on the floor, the years of hatred and resentment collapsing around him. He gently took my hand, his lips trembling. Julie, I'm sorry, He tried to touch me again, but I pulled away. Joaquin, this will probably be the last time we see each other. Is there anything you want to say to me? Tears streamed down Joaquin's face, and he opened his mouth, but even an apology seemed too difficult to utter. Julie, I deserve to die. I listened quietly and said, I hope you'll sign the divorce papers. I will. And the debt? There won't be any, he choked out. There won't, I nodded, my throat tight. That's good. I have nothing more to say. Seeing the hesitation on his face, I cut him off. Don't say you love me again. Just like before, when you wouldn't let me love you. Chapter 7, Joaquin's perspective. Juliet was gone. She took the few things she had left with her. Joaquin sat there holding their wedding photo for an entire day and night. He kept flipping through their photo album, his mind slowly being consumed by memories. The hatred had faded, and now his heart throbbed with sharp pain, like needles pricking every inch. In every photo he could see the happiness in her eyes. When had it all gone so wrong? 3 years ago, his father had said he discovered evidence of the Han family's tax evasion. Not long after that, his father died in a car accident. The car exploded, and at the scene, only 3 charred bodies were found. That day, as Joaquin looked at his father, he couldn't explain what he felt. The trip had been Juliet's father's suggestion, and as a result, his father died. What's more, the police report stated there had been an argument inside the car just before the accident. So when he saw the pale, shocked look on Juliet's face, cruel words escaped him before he could stop them. He thought that perhaps marrying Juliet had been the reason for his father's death. Even now he could remember how Juliet had timidly withdrawn her hand that day. She had bowed her head as if she had done something wrong. Her parents had died, but in front of him, the man who had lost the most, she had to wipe her tears away in secret. Juliet had always loved him. Joaquin didn't know what he had been thinking. Watching her forced composure whenever she was hurt made him feel a sense of satisfaction. Even though she was the daughter of the man responsible for his father's death, even though he couldn't live without her, as long as he treated her badly, he felt justified. Now that she was gone, all of those memories came flooding back, sharper than ever. The late-night bowls of soup she would bring him after a night out, the coat she would drape over his shoulders, and those quiet apologies and tears she shed when she thought he was asleep. They weighed on him like chains, locking him into a past he could never escape. He hadn't cared at the time, had he? He relentlessly tormented her, mocking her, trampling on her love. But in the end, he had hated the wrong person. Reality had struck him like a sledgehammer, hammering away at his heart, blow after blow, unrelenting. On the phone, someone was still speaking. It wasn't hunching after all. After his death, his younger brother secretly transferred a sum of money. Joaquin closed his eyes. It was over. The truth was clear. Now he was tasting the full bitterness of his own retribution. It was worse than death. But who would give him a second chance to undo it all? Juliet was gone. On the shelf in the living room, there was still a pile of unused burn cream she had left behind. Joaquin thought back to that bowl of warm porridge Juliet had brought him in the rain. What had happened to it? It seemed Fiora had thrown it away. She had taken a single taste, pinching her nose as if repulsed. It tastes earthy. How could a porridge made with abalone and sea cucumber have an earthy taste? But he had let Fiora do it. The cigar burned slowly in the dark. Fiora called, "Joaquin, are you okay? Do you need me to come over and keep you company?" Was it your idea for Leonardo to go after Juliet? In the past, he had indulged Fiora as a way to hurt Juliet. But Fiora had wanted too much. She had overstepped, meddling in things between him and Juliet that she had no business touching. "Oh, I just accidentally overheard your conversation with your secretary. Leonardo going was more effective than sending your secretary. I was just trying to help you." The glamorous woman he had elevated still thought she could cover it up with a sweet tone and flirtation. Even the video circulating online had been her doing. Joaquin didn't respond. He hung up. Then he messaged his secretary. That night, Fiora's scandal hit the news. It was easy to destroy someone. Fiora had flaunted her power under his protection. But all Joaquin had to do was withdraw that protection, and she would be devoured by the world without a trace left behind. The secretary messaged back after some time. What about her assets? Do what you want. Joaquin stood up from the sofa, accidentally knocking over a box. It fell to the floor, spilling its contents. It was a small card. He bent down to pick it up. Juliet's neat handwriting was clear on the card. If I could do it over, I'd wish it were me who had died. On the back of the card, in golden lettering, were the words, Happy Birthday. On Juliet's birthday, her wish had been to die in everyone else's place. It felt like Joaquin's throat was suddenly being squeezed. The guilt he had suppressed for so long finally broke through, completely overwhelming him. He collapsed to the floor and called Juliet. After a brief dial tone, the call connected. But it wasn't Juliet. It was Alice. What should I do? Joaquin's voice was hoarse, like a man begging for redemption, lost and helpless. Please tell me. What should I do? Alice answered softly. She may never walk again. Even the best doctors can't fix it. Mr. Shen, perhaps you'll live out the rest of your life burdened by guilt and loneliness. But to me, that doesn't count as retribution. What could possibly restore the health and happiness that Julie once had? Nothing. Some mistakes once made can never be undone. Kind hearts always sympathize too easily with those in crisis and feel too much guilt for their own actions. Joaquin, you've done both, and that's why she gave you everything she had to offer, but you never deserved it. It's not that you were wrong. Her parents simply raised her too well, and you were never worthy of her. If you have any conscience left, you should stay in hell and never see her again. Chapter 8. Joaquin eventually signed the divorce papers. He gave Juliet a considerable amount of assets, and the lawyer was sent to handle everything. After that, their divorce proceeded quietly, with Juliet slipping out of his life without a sound. No trace of her remained. Joaquin carried on with his life in a numb state, doing what needed to be done. He dealt with Leonardo and Juliet's second uncle. Leonardo ended up in prison, experiencing the harassment he had once inflicted on others. Juliet's uncle died on a foreign highway, bound to the driver's seat and burned to ashes, just like how Joaquin's father had died. The rest of Joaquin's days were spent at home, repeating the process of cooking from the recipes Juliet had left behind. Hot oil splattered onto his skin, causing blisters. He thought to himself, so this is what she must have felt back then. Even knowing the food would eventually be thrown away, she had persisted time and again. Even the strongest love could be worn down. As Alice had said, Joaquin lived in his own personal hell year after year. Living alone, making money alone, and sponsoring children's education. Once a powerful figure in the business world, by his early 30s, Joaquin already carried the air of someone much older, weathered by life. Alice was right. He would live with his guilt and die alone, but that wasn't really punishment. The idea of karma was just a comforting illusion people told themselves. Joaquin didn't know what he could do to ease the ever-growing guilt inside him. That spring, he suddenly longed to see Juliet again, even just a glimpse. After some inquiries, he found out that she lived in a nearby city, not too far from him. Joaquin packed his things and drove to her city alone. At the hospital entrance, he saw Juliet coming out after a checkup. She was standing. She wasn't in a wheelchair. Joaquin exhaled in relief, but then he noticed a tall man standing beside her. The sunlight was perfect, illuminating the man's profile, his smile gentle. Joaquin felt as if he'd been struck, staring at the man. He looked so much like Joaquin had when he was younger. Juliet was holding onto his arm, and the two of them looked just like any other ordinary couple, basking in the calm of a peaceful life. A nurse chased after them. "Oh, by the way, here's the medicine you left last time." The man turned back to thank the nurse, his other hand protectively guiding Juliet down the steps. Joaquin's face went pale. Is she married? At that moment, Juliet's gaze briefly swept in his direction. He quickly covered his face with his mask and stepped into the shadows. He overheard the man ask, "What's wrong?" Juliet's familiar voice responded in a light-hearted tone. "That person looks a bit like someone I know. Want to go over and check?" "No, the movie's about to start," she urged him on, clearly in high spirits. The man smiled. All right, there's still time. We can get ice cream before it starts. Joaquin, almost in a trance, followed them to the cinema. He sat a few rows behind them, thinking, maybe Juliet hasn't forgotten about me. Why else would she have found a man who looked so much like him? Even the way he spoke was just like Joaquin in his younger days. If I show up now, if I ask her to come with me, would she? Throughout the entire romance movie, Joaquin didn't take in a single word. He just stared at the couple in front of him. The more he watched, the more certain he became that Juliet would come back to him. This might be his last chance to make things right with her. When they left the theater, the bright lights stung his eyes. Joaquin quickened his pace, reaching out to tap Juliet's shoulder, but before he could, they were stopped by someone conducting a street survey. Be patient, Joaquin told himself. Don't approach her in a crowd. It'll scare her. A few more minutes wouldn't hurt. So he paused, pulling out his phone to order a bouquet of flowers. He stood nearby, pretending to browse a book display. The interviewer asked, "How long have you two known each other?" "A year," the man answered naturally. "Who pursued who?" "I pursued my wife," he said, pride evident in his voice. The interviewer handed the microphone to Juliet. "What attracted you to him?" Joaquin stopped scrolling, his gaze fixed on Juliet. Her eyes were bright as she answered, "I love the way he works on his research." "Research?" "Yeah, he's a medical professor. Research is part of his everyday life." Joaquin's phone buzzed. His flower order had been accepted. Juliet continued, "And he loves dogs. We have 2 of them. Plus, he's really into photography. He takes amazing pictures." That was probably the most painful thing Joaquin had ever heard. He stared at the successful order confirmation and felt a wave of irony wash over him. Of course, he thought. Why did I ever think Juliet still cared about me? He was allergic to dogs and had no interest in photography. He had thought she'd found a substitute for him, but in reality, she had simply found someone who fit her type. And that was all. As the evening sky burned with fiery reds and oranges, Joaquin realized his last chance at redemption had slipped away. He started the car, determined to follow Juliet one last time. He wanted to watch her as she walked towards her happiness. The traffic light ahead turned green. Juliet and her husband stepped onto the crosswalk. In the distance, Joaquin saw a tanker truck veer out of control, smashing through the barriers and barreling toward the sidewalk. Sometimes a person's fate can be sealed in just 1 second. Joaquin swerved his car, placing it in the truck's path. Seconds later, a deafening crash echoed through the streets. The tanker collided with his car, swerving off course and crashing into the greenery. Joaquin's car was flipped several meters away, and after the screeching halt, smoke began to rise from the wreckage. The pedestrians screamed and backed away in fear. The airbags deployed, but Joaquin no longer felt pain. He hung upside down in the car, his head turned to the outside. Through the window, he saw a pair of white flats pause for a moment before hurrying away. Slowly, he saw the pale legs, the hand around her waist, and finally Juliet and her husband's backs. The sunset painted the sky in vivid hues, beautiful like a picture. Joaquin reached out weakly as if trying to grasp Juliet's retreating figure, making one final silent farewell. Julie. Then a massive explosion shook the air, flames engulfing the wrecked vehicle. Everything from the past burned to ashes. Juliet suddenly received a phone call as they reached the curb. "Hello, ma'am. We have a bouquet for you. There's only your phone number listed. Could you provide us with an address?" "A bouquet? We didn't order any flowers, but the sender already paid for them. Could you give us an address?" Juliet glanced nervously at the intersection. She gave the delivery person the address. After hanging up, she looked back at the scene of the crash with concern. His family must be devastated. Her husband gently patted her head. "He saved our lives. Yeah, that's why I gave them this address. I hope he finds peace in his next life." Her husband took her hand. "Let's go. The hospital won't be quiet tonight." As they walked away, Juliet took one last glance at the wreckage. Then she hurried to catch up with the man she loved.